So I think we are ready to start. So I will, before giving the floor to Sandra, I will share my screen, dear colleagues. So give me please one moment. Hello, Dimitri. Welcome.
Hello.
So I was waiting for you in order to start the intro. So I would like to welcome you to this conference. Is really the first conference that we are organizing after two years. So it's a great pleasure to see some of the colleagues here and many colleagues also online. Before giving the floor to Sandra, who officially opened the conference, this Open Classroom Medium Conference, I would like, let's say, to share with you a piece of news that I have received today. So it's an article about the history of Playmobil. I received it today. Of course, it's a bit old, but it has to do with many things that we are discussing the last days about gamification and the importance of involvement of the users in the learning process. So this article is describing the success story of Playmobil, and it's referring, of course, the article is in Greek, but I will translate this for you. It says that the major success of Playmobil was based on the fact that they have only created a very simple figure. In reality, they have created only 19 different figures in the beginning. But the children had the opportunity to modify, to create numerous scenarios, different worlds around these figures. And this was the key, the catalyst for the success of this toy. And furthermore, a bit lower at the end of the article, it says that the company that is producing Playmobil, a very big company that it is located outside Nuremberg in Germany, has today a special department that receiving ideas and projects, let's say concepts from young children about new figures, new games, and so on. And they are working on them, and many of them have become great success. So I believe that the pandemic brought all of us in the situation to use what we have, the simple tools that we had in our hands. And there was something like a red tape around them, preventing us to use them for educational purposes. And it has opened a new series of opportunities for us. And I think the main challenge is to take advantage of all this, to see how we can use them in an integrated environment, in a new schooling environment to support students' learning. So in this framework, we are very happy to host once more the Open Classroom Conference of Eden. I think it's about 25 years since the first Open Classroom Conference took place in Irakli on Crete, bringing the concept of this open school environment, more autonomous, open to the external world, to external stakeholders, and to synergies with experts, with researchers, with industry, with local communities. And I think the president of Eden is the most appropriate person to address this conference here at the start. Mrs. Sandra Kuzina-Sotic has the floor.
Thank you, Sophocles. I'm very happy to join you virtually today to be able to say a few words at the beginning of one more Open Class Conference, jointly organized with Elino Germaniki Agogi for a number of years, as Sophocles already said. And this is very good collaboration. I'm very happy for that. And I think such collaboration has brought many good things to all of us and also enhanced the community, raising awareness on importance of issues of open classroom and open schools. Today, we are facing real challenges, and I like very much the title of the conference for this year, which says, "Real challenges take place in a deep crisis." Definitely, yes, but my question would be, why do we need crisis to make real changes, you know? Certainly, when we talk about openness and digital technologies and digital transformation, these are not new issues, have been present for a number of years, but still somehow it took time and it took a lot of energy, and there were a number of obstacles in achieving even slight changes, even slight improvements in education as such. And for the lasting 19 months, we experienced the biggest disruption of education in history. And our lives, our work, our education, teaching and learning has to change, made us to move from our comfort, from everyday, usually way of living, working and learning, to an online environment, providing actually internet as our window to the world. At such times, we took the opportunity, we took what we had at our hands, mainly focusing on video conferencing tools in order to enable online lectures. And we are talking today about Zoomers, about the fatigue from all time looking at the screen, and finding numerous negative effects of being present only online. At the same time, we have learned a number of new skills. We gained significant experience working in online environment. We were able to communicate on the global level with others in exchanging know-how, discussing and gaining new ideas. So definitely, as Sophocles said, we had to take this situation as a push, as an opportunity to do something different and better in the future. What is actually going on is that now we have experience that now we have reflected and can every day reflect on what we have learned so far. And we have to question ourselves, are we going back to the normal we used to have before the pandemic? Are we going to stay on in the same way of teaching and learning as we did for the last 19 months? Or are we going to make some significant changes in the way we teach and learn? When we talk about going back to the normal, I think the first we should say actually what is normal. We are talking about new normal, better normal in the context of normal before the pandemic. But we can question ourselves, was the education, the school education, the higher education at that time something which should have been organized in that way in the 21st century, in a digital age? Digital transformation is not an easy, it's very complex, it takes time, it takes resources, human and financial, and it's a task which is not embraced easily and always with happiness. But I think this is something which should have been done. And we cannot now reject it and even thinking going to the way we have been teaching before the pandemic. Definitely the issue of fatigue, of mental health, of stress of teachers and students who were not prepared for the learning environment, online learning environment as such, certainly make us think that let's go back to the classroom, as this will enable socialization. We are human beings, we want to be among colleagues, we want to experience these social contacts, and the best teaching is in the classroom. I do understand that, and we do want we want to be able to move freely without restrictions which brought pandemic, and to be among colleagues. But at the same time, let's not forget that education we have experienced for the last 19 months was not online education which was planned and designed for online environment. It was mostly face-to-face teaching, which was just moved into online environment. And our experience with online education as such is, I would say, is very minor. It's not the same, and we do not have experience with planned and organized online education. So all the negative remarks and reflections should be taken with careful consideration. But definitely, we need to educate teachers to be able to teach in an online environment. They have gained some digital skills. They know how to use some tools, but definitely we need to focus more on to train them how to implement digital technologies into teaching and learning, how to use digital pedagogies into organize high quality classes. We also have to provide support to students who are not prepared and are not so much acquainted with digital technologies for learning. They know everything about using of different apps and mobiles and gadgets for socializing online, but they were not prepared for learning online and definitely need support. Not only technical support, but support in organization of their time for learning as well. We have to provide support to management of the institutions who has to go go into digital transformation and have to encounter all the issues which are related to digital transformation. They have to tackle them and make their institutions to be fully prepared for digital education in digital age. So different issues, number of issues. One also important thing is that the communities, the parents, the environment, they have to be aware of the possibilities of digital technologies, of the openness as such, and what they can bring to education in a way that they improve it and raise the quality of education. So actually we need the mind shift that digital education is something which is good if prepared and delivered in a proper way. In that way, I think that communities of practice, which were present even before, but especially during pandemic, has, I would say, had the new rise as such, because as the people were gathered at home with internet and could actually reach to people on a global level, it was important for everyone to be able to share their knowledge, their experience, their concerns, their ideas with other colleagues, to learn from others, to be able to share their doubts as well as happiness about some issues. So digital communities of practice enabled us to shape the education as we are having today, but they also were here as a support to teachers and to learners in their personal and professional development. Eden, as such, has also responded to the pandemic with organization of number of activities, providing the platform for sharing and for exchanging know-how and expertise, for collaboration. And many of people joined there, finding the safe place, finding the place where something is going on with people with similar concerns, doubts, and problems and issues as they had on their own. So I think that every conference, every gathering where we were able to share our expertise, our knowledge, our know-how, where we're able to discuss, is one more steps to what we want to achieve in the future. Let's be creators of our future. Let's create a future we want to have. Let's not be just consumers who will take what is offered to them. So with these words, I wish you very successful conference and very creative and good days in Athens and online. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like now to give the floor to Jean-François Revelard from DBC to make a virtual tour to the facilities of Ελληνογερμανική Αγωγή in the virtual world, Second Life, where we have also the opportunity to transmit the conference, and we have followers there who are attending the conference in the virtual world. So, Jean-François, you have the floor.
Hello, welcome to everybody. I'm just watching some Saturn image in world with through the telescope that we have. It's an amazing situation to watch like this. Some pictures of Saturn inside the virtual world. Here we are in the science part of Ελληνογερμανική Αγωγή in world. And we have many information about weather, about astronomical observation, and this part is a very big part that we have made for students to visit an exhibition canceled due to the coronavirus, and we have rebuilt totally the exhibition with interactive tool, video for watching video about robotic things, and many other interactive tools about space, this space project. We are inside Elino Germanici Agogi virtual world. There is classroom, as you see in the background, and now we are going to the last experimentation that we have made, and it's a big success. It's a museum about Myrtis. Everybody knows the story of Myrtis, and we have rebuilt a museum also in order to visit it and to have all the information needed by a teacher to make a visit inside and to show to the student all the story of Myrtis in a 3D interactive way. As you can see, this is the beginning of the discovering of Myrtis. There is also some tools, so you can watch some book inside, and you can watch many information through videos, and also interact with all the attendees around. And you have, of course, a full representation, 3D representation of the result of the research about Myrtis. You can visit it exactly like a museum, but you can visit it in inside your classroom. There is all the story, all the reconstruction of the face of Myrtis described on this wall, and many information. You click on the cube and you go to the website with information about this amazing story of Myrtis. And this museum is open 20 hours for 20 hours, and all the days, and night also, if you want to spend your time during the night on museum. Here, this is all the classroom, interactive classroom that we have inside this virtual island. And the school is a prefiguration of maybe what we can do tomorrow inside the virtual school. You can go inside, and there is a book and also videos. Every place have his book and his video, and you can watch videos. You can have some information through the screen, asking questions, and everything, every interactive things. I try to be short and efficient in my commentary. And of course, in virtual world, you can fly to go more rapidly place to place. Oh. And here, this is center, Congress Center of Elino Germanici, where we build every time with posters and information about the conference, and a link to website where you can find more information. And of course, inside the conference, you can follow, like a normal Congress house, the Zoom session, as you can see, with a little delay, as you can see on the pictures. Of course, there is a delay between the real action and the Zoom video, but you can see, you can take a seat and participate to the Congress. And you can also manage from the desk. For example, you can manage everything from the desk to show videos or slide or anything. It's like a normal Congress also, except that it's in virtual and you can share it. No, I think I can let Sophocles, Dr. Sophocles Sotiriou to speak and to take my place. Maybe you have question or something like that. I try to make it shortly.
Thank you so much, Jean-François. It was very, very nice. I believe that we will have the opportunity also to interact with the participants during the whole conference. So we will stay connected.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And now it's time to start the session with the keynote speeches. The aim, let's say, of this first session is to describe the the environment where this transformation process can happen. And I believe that the open school concept holds a great potential if we want to see these innovative aspects to take place really in the school reality, in the school practice. We have really to reorganize the school environment. And open schooling has a number of, let's say, is presenting a number of opportunities, as Professor Sampson is going to present us in the first keynote speech. Professor Sampson, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. So we are looking forward to hear your views on open school culture.
Okay, thank you very much. And apologies for not being physically there. I misunderstood, I must admit, the instructions, and I arrived yesterday from my first trip to France after a very long time. So I'm sharing now my screen. Can you please confirm that you can hear me and see the slides? Sophocles?
Yes, Dimitri, everything is okay.
Okay, that's great. I just, Sophocles reminded me that the first open classroom conference that I attended was back in 1997. It was actually September, not October. It was in Crete. I can recall it was a very nice hotel that hosted the conference. Dr. Nikitas Kastis was the organizer of that conference, if I can recall correctly. And I even can recall a nice dinner in a conference dinner in a cage in that hotel. That time, I presented two papers, one about using virtual reality to stimulate experiments in physics, and the other was about a big project that we were running that time, the Web for School project, which has been, let's say, the project that eventually led to the European School Network and other projects, other initiatives at European Union. So it was nice to be reminded that there have been already past 25 years since that event. But still, I think that many of the things that we were discussing in that conference are still valid for both research and practice, which is an interesting note to take. Now, in my presentation, I will discuss issues related with the open school classroom in the post-COVID-19 era. So during the COVID crisis, almost all educational institutions, both at school level and colleges, universities, even professional development training centers around the globe, they had to adopt an emergency remote teaching strategy to cope with this public health emergency. This created an emergent need for temporarily online access to teaching and learning at a global scale. It's the first time that this had happened, and it revealed both significant shortcomings and inequalities in terms of accessing the technology and in terms of skills that are needed to effectively use technology in teaching and learning and also in assessment. But in parallel, it demonstrated and revealed the enormous potential of technology-supported innovation in education. So there are certain lessons to be learned, both challenges and opportunities that I will try to highlight in my presentation today. And when it comes to the post-COVID-19 era, which is more or less the era that we are entering now, especially with the start of this academic year, obviously school organizations on the one side, but also leaders and teachers on the other side are challenged to reinvent their teaching and learning environment and not to go back to the same environment like it was before the post-COVID-19 era, but to integrate lessons and that have been learned during that time, and also innovations, foster and use and host innovations that have been used during that period, in order to provide better quality, of course, which is the general purpose of any transformation, but also to make the educational system more accessible, more inclusive, and more open, both in terms of teaching and learning, but also in terms of assessment. I'll come back to that issue, which I think it's an important issue in education. So reinforcing, we have the opportunity to reinforce technology-supported open school classroom culture during through the lessons that we have learned during this COVID-19 lockdown period. And I will categorize my thoughts into these 5 dimensions: the open curriculum, the opportunities for the curriculum to become more open, the opportunities for the pedagogies to become more open, the opportunities for the means and the technologies to become more open, the opportunities for the assessment of and for learning to become more open, and also what is, in my view, one of the most important issues, the open leadership and the open educational policies that are needed in this post-COVID era. So in regard with the curriculum, I have highlighted 3 core issues. One of the lessons learned is that the problems that we are facing nowadays are global problems, and they require a global understanding and global perspective to deal with them. And that calls for an internationalization of the curriculum, or more internationalization of the curriculum. The curriculum that is locked into the local and national perspectives are not good enough anymore. And that is one of the open dimensions related with the curriculum itself. Educating future citizens, understanding that at the school level, we educate future citizens of an interconnected world of smart cities, for example, that calls for a new agenda related with smart citizenship curriculum. And at the end of my presentation, I'll give a hint on that. And also preparing our youth to become more effective thinkers and ethical global citizens in a changing world and more digital world, as we have seen it emerging during the COVID lockdown. It's also a new priority that can open up the curriculum of at school level. Moving to the pedagogies, rethinking traditional lecture-based teaching strategies and consider alternative teaching strategies such as flipped classroom, it becomes now a mainstream strategy, teaching strategy around the globe as an effect of the COVID-19 fully online opportunities for the teaching and learning. The next level is now this blended learning flipped classroom approach that becomes more mainstream compared to what it was before. Rethinking the role of educators as truly facilitators of students' learning through the experience of the COVID-19 era is emerging around the globe in a more prominent way. So less teaching time for lecturing and more time for feedback, for scaffolding, for guidance to the individual students are becoming more visible into the day-to-day teaching activities compared to the past, as people realize how important this part, the feedback, the scaffolding, the guidance to the individual students was during the lockup times that students were missing this part to a large extent. And also supporting students themselves in developing learning skills to become more autonomous and more self-regulated learners, a competence that was actually needed during the COVID-19 period for students to cope with this emergency situation, are also important for defining and controlling the new learning environments that schools and teachers, they have to reinvent for themselves. So moving to the technologies and the means, unlocking existing technologies, basically what Sophocles said in his introduction, using what we already have instead of just foreseeing much more complex technologies that will come in the future. As I mentioned before, I presented in 1997 Open Classroom Conference, a virtual reality system to support the simulation in physics exams. And now our colleague presented a virtual reality, a virtual world classroom and school, basically. So the technologies are more or less there. So what we need to do is basically unlock existing technologies in order to provide online access to digital educational resources on one hand, that they are represented in multiple forms and have different levels of interactivity. So we move far beyond the text, the traditional textbooks, to more interactive e-books, including, for example, educational resources which are enhanced with augmented reality. And during this conference, you will see some very interesting examples on this particular category. But at the same time, not only provide access to content, but facilitate educational activities through the existing technologies, such as simple things such as online forums and discussions for community building and collaboration, to more complicated issues as experiments in remote and virtual laboratories and online visits, for example, to museums and exhibitions. And again, you will see some very interesting examples of such activities supported with technology in the conference during the course of the 2 days, and integrate all of them to online innovative teaching and learning strategies, such as the flipped classroom strategy that I've mentioned before, is a very pragmatic approach for the next day, for the post-COVID-19 era. Nothing, let's say, futuristic there. The technologies are available. The capacity of the students, of the teachers to use these technologies to a large extent are there. The fourth dimension that I would like to present as an opportunity for opening up schools and school culture is the assessment of and for learning. I think that this is a fundamental issue, rethinking the traditional paper and pencil exams and reinvent the system, the way that we assess learning is an important transformation and change that can happen in the post-COVID era. Moving far away from the paper and pencil exams as the ultimate instrument for the assessment of students' learning and students' performance is important. Try to keep a balance between formative and summative assessment, giving more emphasis to the formative assessment towards enhancing the assessment for learning over the assessment of learning is an important challenge that was faced by schools and teachers during the COVID period, and creative and interesting solutions have been proposed and adopted, based, well-grounded from the theories that we already know, but now used in practice at a large scale to move beyond the traditional paper and pencil exam that was not available or possible during that time. And eventually considering alternative e-assessment strategies, including portfolios, authentic learning, and more performance assessment based on educational data collection and analytics that they come through the activities that they take place all over the year, are becoming also more popular nowadays at a larger scale than before. Finally, an important issue related with the open school classroom, and I think that more speakers will talk about that, is the leadership and the policies. So in that account, I have three different comments to make. One is related with the rethinking of school performance evaluation. For example, considering the level of digital readiness of schools as autonomous educational institutions with instruments like Selfie, for example, is an important step forward in terms of assessing the schools as individual organizations. On the other hand, when it comes to educational policies, adopting flexible educational policies that can facilitate innovations and responsible educational decision-making at regional level and at local level, even at the individual school level, is important, giving more decision power to the communities which are working in the school, including the parents, the teachers, the leaders of the school, and the students. And another topic on this dimension that was mentioned also from the president of Eden is the recognition of the role of teacher communities, especially teacher communities that openly share good practices in different contexts and interact with each other in a sort of reflective mode, so that the individual practices become better and better through the process of interactions between these communities. So these are the five different dimensions that I have organized my thoughts, at least, for recommendations for the future, and also my thoughts in relationship with where things go and which are the opportunities from the lessons that have been learned during the COVID-19 period, and especially the lockdown and the emergency remote teaching, moving to the new post-COVID-19 era. Coming to my conclusions, I understand that we would like to have some time for interaction with the audience. Experiences during the periods of lockdown demonstrated the importance of the digital capacity, both for schools as organizations, but also for teachers and leaders. So the pre-existing digital capacity was an important factor for the quick and stable transition from the face-to-face teaching to the online teaching during the emergency remote teaching period. So highlighting the digital capacity of both schools and school teachers and leaders is an important factor. The readiness of school teachers and their ability to adapt new pedagogical strategies and get good results, both in online and blended learning, teaching and learning was fundamental. So it is fundamental in the post-COVID era too. It's interesting to highlight at least two issues from the 2020 European Commission communication on achieving the European educational area by the year 2025. One is that they emphasize on the crucial role of teachers and trainers as cornerstones of European economy and social prosperity. That's a very important statement and a strong one. And the recognition for the need of highly competent and motivated educators with opportunities for continuing development throughout their career, and also addressing issues related with the teacher shortage that most of the European countries, or many of the European countries, are actually facing nowadays. As I said, I come back from a trip in Europe last week, and I was actually part of a forum that discussed this issue. On the other hand, technology has indeed a transformative capacity. Nevertheless, sustainable changes, they require a systemic and not opportunistic change. Therefore, the lessons and the means and the practices that have been used during the lockdown period should not be ignored in the post-COVID era and just force ourselves back to the previous situation, the fully face-to-face one. But in a way, the policies, they need to support especially the teachers communities that have done marvelous and tremendous work in reinventing the teaching and learning strategies, and also the assessment strategies, into integrating all these things in the new day-to-day teaching and learning activities in an open way. And the last thing I would like to share with you is that during that period, actually late last year, a new international standard has been emerged, a new standard related with digital intelligence. It comes under the umbrella of IEEE, but it integrates different efforts from different parts, like, for example, the European Competence Framework for Digital Citizens, and the other frameworks in the United States, in Australia, in Asia, and other parts of the world. So this is a new standard for digital intelligence that I recommend to anyone who is interested in this field to have a closer look. Is related with different dimensions of digital intelligence, not only the digital emotional intelligence, for example, but issues related with security, safety, the use of resources, the digital identity, the digital rights, and things like that. I think that we will pay more attention into this digital intelligence specification in the future in all the activities that I discussed in my presentation. So it was 20 minutes. So Sophoclea, we have 10 minutes for questions and discussion as you have asked.
Dimitri, always in time. Thank you so much for this. I would like to take, let's say, the opportunity as I'm sharing this session to make the first question. And I noticed that you were in the paper that you presented in the first Open Classroom conference, you were referring to virtual worlds and virtual experiments in physics. I think that now, 25 years later, we had really a chance to see such things taking place, especially in experimental physics. I think it was a part of education that suffered most, because really we didn't see this, let's say, the use of online experiments, virtual experiments, at least in the, let's say, in the distance learning approach. So what, according to your view, are the main obstacles of not adapting, let's say, and not using this kind of tools, especially in a situation like the pandemic, when there are numerous, let's say, repositories, tools, well-tested, easy to use. I don't think that there are specific difficulties, but still, although we had the opportunity in the specific area, it seems that we have not managed to really to implement and use these tools at a large scale. And I think this was also the case at the university level, not only at school. Many of the labs at the universities stopped the operation, although they had this opportunity. According to your view, is a technological issue, it's a cultural issue, it's an organizational issue. What's the main reason, according to your view, that after 25 years of efforts, still we are not able to implement this kind of innovations at scale?
Okay, first I must say that the paper I had presented we had presented in 1997 was actually two PhDs from Professor Pidelas, and that time we had a national project that was supporting this. I was working for the industry that time, and that was a very good introduction to me that time on this. So I want to pay respect to Professor Pidelas and his two students, Konstantinos Diplas and Georgios Koutelieris, that were actually doing their PhD on this particular field 25 years back. And they had actually developed a nice software that was supporting such experiments that time. That's one thing. The second thing is that, of course, there are lots of virtual laboratories and also experiments that can be conducted, and scenarios and things like that available, both at university level, but also at school level. At the university, I can tell you that in some parts of the world, the institutions were actually ready to adopt such technologies in a very seamless way. For example, in Australia, because they have already done this before as part of their daily practice. So in my experience, all these universities that before COVID, they were using these tools and integrate them in their daily practice, as it was, for example, in Australia, where most of the laboratories, they are actually taking place online. So these organizations and the personnel, the tutors, the teachers that were supporting them, they were ready to adopt this and use them. Those that were conducting only face-to-face experiments with physical instruments in a physical space, they had a huge let's say, a difficulty to make the shift into the new situation on the run. Okay, So it was a matter of, in my view, especially in terms of the university, it was a matter of readiness, as I said in my presentation. Okay, when it comes to schools, it's the same situation. For example, schools like Ελληνογερμανική, they were quite, or even more than quite, ready to use such innovations because they were already using them in the past. And I have the example of one of my master's students who is working for Ελληνογερμανική, Cleo Milioni, and she might be in the audience. She did a very interesting experiment related with the collaborative problem-solving capacity of the students during COVID-19 in solving problems in let's say, experiments that are conducted basically online. Okay, so the readiness of an organization and the people around the organization, the teachers and the students, was an important factor for me.
Thank you so much, Dimitri. Let me check if there are questions from the audience. No questions. So it was okay. only me. Thank you so much. Once more for your great contribution. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will start, let's say, from the closing remark of Dimitrios in his last slide. He said that technology has really a very strong transformative capacity, but it has to be used in a systemic way rather than in an opportunistic way. And I think there is a specific, let's say, technology. It covers a major part of the so-called emerging technologies this moment, which is artificial intelligence, that has been discussed a lot about the opportunities that they can offer, the challenges and the opportunities that they can offer. So to discuss this issue, we have the great pleasure and honor to have with us Fedra Boinodiris from the IBM Academy of Technology to present to us the perspectives of using artificial intelligence in education. Fedra, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. And I am truly honored to be presenting to you this evening for you. Let me just, am I able to share my screen? Disabled participant. If you would please kindly allow me to do that. Thank you. Excellent. Can everybody see this okay?
Now it's okay. Yes.
Yes. Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So the objective for my brief talk with you today is really to make you care every bit as much as I do about this space as me. I'm going to be talking to you about some things that certainly are concerning, are challenging, but also very exciting in many ways. And I'm going to be offering you some suggestions on what you can do, what you can bring to your classrooms to really address some of the larger challenges that we have with respect to artificial intelligence. A little bit about my background. Before joining IBM, I had been a serial entrepreneur for about 15 years, focused on video games for entertainment in particular. And I ended up joining IBM to lead our first practice in serious games and advanced simulations, when you use a video game to do something other than just entertainment. And that is where I got very interested in artificial intelligence. This idea of being able to integrate real data and processes within very sophisticated games in order to solve different kinds of challenges within organizations. And I've always been very, very inspired by digital tech inclusivity. So I've volunteered ever since I can remember in K through 12 efforts. So I did a lot of work in the idea of intersecting AI and play as a means to educate, to optimize education, which was super fun. Then in 2018, many things happened that really gave me a sense of pause. It actually filled me with a lot of horror, really. It made me want to learn as much as I possibly could about the space of AI and ethics. So I'm currently pursuing a PhD in this space through the University College Dublin. And my current role within IBM is I'm our trustworthy AI practice leader within our consulting division. So I work directly with customers to help them be more responsible curators of artificial intelligence. So with that preamble, there are three things that really keep me up at night. One is, of course, climate change. The second thing that keeps me up at night is the concern that most people have no idea that an AI is being used to make all kinds of decisions that may directly impact their lives, right? Whether their child gets into that university that they applied for, whether that person gets the job, what percentage interest rate they get on their loan for their house. The third thing that keeps me up at night is that oftentimes I find people make the mistake of thinking that because it's not a fallible human making this decision, that somehow the decision is going to be morally or ethically squeaky clean, and they don't need to worry about it. So, of course, that could not be farther from the truth, because it's we fallible humans who are training those AI models, who are determining which data sets to use in order to curate those models. Just a couple of examples from the United States that certainly resonated with me. This one in particular, fairly recent, is from the state of Michigan that procured an AI to help flag when insurance fraud was happening, specifically with respect to welfare. And this AI model ran for 3 years with a 15% accuracy score. And well over 35,000 families were economically destroyed because this AI model was flagging families incorrectly, for flagging them as being complicit or responsible for welfare fraud. And what's truly terrifying about this is that a number of different groups actually knew that it had a 15% accuracy score, and it ran anyway. So that's one example. Here's another one, which you may have heard of. This is from a couple of years ago. Amazon, which had the very best of intentions in their use for this AI model. They wanted to use it to help their organization be more diverse and inclusive with respect to their recruiting practices. So they created this AI that was meant to scan for different resumes, and they trained the AI based on star performer traits for the spectacularly amazing employees that Amazon wanted more of, right? And so what they did in order to ensure that the AI model would be non-biased is they removed gender and they removed race out of the data set, right? But what problem they had was that historically, those star performers, those senior executives within Amazon typically were white, male, and from high socioeconomic backgrounds. And so even if the AI model didn't see that you were a woman or didn't see that you were Black, right? If you had in your resume, I am a Girl Scout troop leader, because no other star performers historically had those words in there, because again, the AI model was trained on keywords, that resume got scored lower. So again, you can see, even with organizations who have the very best of intentions, they can cause all kinds of different individual or societal harm. And I especially like this chart. This is from the Future of Privacy Forum. They did some wonderful work categorizing the different kinds of potential harm, right? Some of which I've mentioned here, economic loss, loss of opportunity, social detriment, loss of liberty. Note also from the commercial side of the fence, what we're seeing is that about at least 80% of the AI projects get stuck in proof of concept. They never actually make it to deployment. And this is for a number of different reasons, right? It fails because their creators don't clearly define the business intent, set overly ambitious goals, launch before they are ready to provide value, don't address the connection between business, AI governance, and AI ethics. And I would say this one should be underlined 3 times and bolded and italicized, right? And just to hone in on this a little bit more, this question of trust, we're also seeing this from the consumer side of the fence, right? 81% of the consumers saying they're more concerned now than ever with respect to how companies are using data. 70% are now less likely to trust organizations with their personal information. So this idea of earning trust in artificial intelligence is what is core to what this discussion is going to be about, right? What does it take to earn trust in an AI out in the market? So we've thought about this a lot, and we've broken it out into 5 different areas, or 5 different what we call pillars, right? First question to ask oneself when designing, developing, deploying an AI model is to think about if it's fair. Right? Is it fair, especially with respect to historically underrepresented groups of people? Second one, is it easy to understand? Is it explainable? Like, what was the primary reason that this AI model came up with this decision about me, or this decision about Grigori? Like, what data did it use in order to make this decision? The third pillar is this idea of robustness. Like, is it possible that someone could have hacked into this model in some way to either advantage themselves and or disadvantage other people, right? So is it possible that anybody could have tampered with it? The fourth pillar is it accountable? Can you demonstrate the data lineage and provenance of what was actually used to train this model? How fresh is that data, right? Where did it come from? Can I see a fact sheet that details more information about that particular model? And then, of course, lastly, does it actually protect data? Does it actually protect user data? Now, if there's any statement that I want you to walk away from, it's this one. More often than not, people think that this space, everything I'm talking about, is a technological challenge. It is not. It is not a technological challenge. It is a socio-technological challenge. And because it is a socio-technological challenge, it must be addressed and approached holistically. Right? You've got to be thinking about people, you've got to be thinking about processes, and you've got to be thinking about tools. And from the education, K through 12 side of the fence, you need to be thinking not about STEM, but about STEAM, right? Again, because I'm talking about the arts and the humanities, and understanding the psychology of people. There is no easy button. And I know we would like to think that there is an easy button when solving societal ills, but unfortunately there is not. In fact, when thinking about like the three principles, like IBM came out with these three principles on how to think about trust and transparency with respect to AI. I thought these were very interesting. The first is, of course, the purpose of AI is to augment human intelligence and not replace it. The second is that data and their insights belong to the creator. And the third is new technology, including AI systems, must be transparent and explainable. Okay, these are, I think, critically important to think about. And as you're thinking about your own institutions, your own organizations that you belong to, also considering what are your principles for things like trust and transparency. And note, again, because it's a socio-technological challenge that must be addressed holistically, ethics does not start at the very end of the project. Like, okay, now that we're ready to deploy this, let's check to make sure it's ethical. It has to happen at the very, very beginning of the project. And I'm going to be talking to you more about how this is done, right? How it's done holistically. First, starting with people. I like to describe this aspect of how to be thinking about approaching AI models with respect to people by starting off with introducing this mathematical theorem, right? The diversity prediction theorem, otherwise called the wisdom of crowds. The idea that when the diversity in a group is large, the error becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. And this is absolutely true with respect to artificial intelligence. When you're looking at your teams of data scientists that are curating an AI model, I want you to be thinking about diversity. How many women are on that team? How many minorities are on that team, right? There is a direct correlation between diversity, equity, inclusivity, and concerns with respect to AI models not being trusted in the market, of litigation, for example, if it is found to be biased, a direct correlation. I call this the iceberg chart, right? That there's a lot of chatter about what's happening above this waterline and less of an understanding that there's a direct correlation between that and lack of diversity on these teams, problems attracting or retaining women and minorities, no history of business resource groups, okay? Note also, of course, that bias is in data, period, stop, because data is produced by humans and humans are biased. And there's over 104 cognitive biases, right? So understanding our bias, understanding it, and finding ways to see it, acknowledge it, render it intransparent, and mitigate for harm. That is what is really key. What we did within IBM in order to establish a culture that can be more nurturing with respect to trustworthy AI is we made something called the Center of Excellence. Now, this is a flattened hierarchy. We've invited all kinds of people, employees across the different silos, not just from research and from AI engineering, but also from design, right? And from the ethics board and all different kinds of groups, from systems and from consulting, all different kinds of groups who have experience in this space, but different kinds of experience coming together and sharing. And the reason why this is so important is because in order to establish a real culture that nurtures this idea of being more responsible for AI, we must learn how to work across uncommon stakeholders, right? So that, let's say, for example, you have a team of data scientists who's procuring an AI model, that they should get used to the idea of bringing in the chief diversity and inclusivity officer, bringing in the chief legal officer, bringing in business resource groups that represent minorities, that represent women, to look at their data set and determine who's not being considered here, right? This is one of our crown jewels that I'm going to be sharing with you, of how we introduce, or we bring in, or we use design thinking with organizations and groups of people, with teams who are looking to either procure, design, develop, deploy an AI model. So what we do with them, again, well before they've written any code, is take a particular use case. And again, this you can do with middle school students. This you can do with high school students, what I'm describing to you, right? You get these folks in the room, again, across different uncommon stakeholders, and you think about what is the primary intent for this particular AI model. So in this case, this example shows a virtual assistant being used in a hotel room, right? So the initial intent is enrich interactions for guests and staff members. The secondary intent, which is intended and known, might be things like, let's capture more of the traveling market, or let's leverage this guest data to improve our services. It's this third layer, the tertiary layer, which is unintended and possibly known, where you really start to get to the meat of what potential individual or societal harm might look like, right? And then once you get to those tertiary effects, you can start to map it out into both beneficial and harmful. And then given what gets fleshed out from that, you can start to do what we call ethical hacking, which means given your credo, given what values your organization has, you can start to determine what's the rights of the end user and how do you design in order to mitigate for that potential harm. And I'm telling you, this kind of approach allows people to have epiphanies, true epiphanies of why there needs to be a communication strategy, why you need to render these AI models explainable, why you need to make sure you have truly diverse teams of data scientists and you're thinking about this every which way. It is critically important. And again, you don't need to know code in order to do this. This is absolutely something we should be doing with more and more younger students. We run this in a half-day workshop, typically with customers. It takes about 4 hours, 4.5 hours. And I'm telling you, it is gold. Another idea or project that we've done within IBM, this one is around specifically explainable AI, right? One of the things we've noticed is the huge lack of research on how are people going to respond, end users going to respond if they find out that an AI model making a decision that directly affects them is probably correct, maybe mostly correct, but not 100% correct, right? We don't really know is the answer. So we did this project with the internal project around the Titanic use case. If you're familiar with the Titanic disaster that happened, imagine an AI model that would help to inform passengers whether they got access to a lifeboat or not, right? Because we have the data associated with who got the lifeboat, you know, what class they were, male, female, married, unmarried, children, no children, etc. And imagine if we trained an AI model to help people determine would they get a lifeboat or not, right? So we went through this whole process of how would you design for explainability? And of course, in that era, the number one deciding factor for whether someone got a lifeboat or not was classism, right? And so we went through this exercise answering all of these different kinds of questions on how would you design this AI model to make this idea that class is the number one determining factor of why the AI model is making these decisions, and then determine and show, like, here's the data lineage and provenance, here's proof of your ticket, answering questions about, like, is this fair? Is it explainable? Is it robust? What's the accuracy score? Giving people the ability to challenge the data. What does that feedback need to look like? Especially with respect to the new EU AI regulations, right? Of when they get feedback and how that kind of feedback is delivered. So it's, again, a wonderful exercise. We actually broke it up into a data science work stream and a design work stream. And that's the kind of project that you can do in your classrooms too, to be thinking through, like, what should the experience be like in order to truly be fair, in order to truly be explainable? Because I'll tell you, I was on the design thinking track. I was leading that design thinking track. There's so much work to be done when thinking about the psychology of the end user and how to truly give an experience that people will understand. Okay. This is freely available. We've donated this to the open source community. This is a fantastic resource that explains what teams of people can do when thinking about AI projects in this way that I've described to you. It's taking, again, a hotel room's virtual in-room assistant and walking individuals through, like, here's the things to be considering at the beginning of the project, middle of the project, end of the project, like all across the AI model lifecycle. So that's people. See what I mean about STEAM and not STEM? Like, there's a lot to be said there. With respect to process, what I'm referring to here is really governance standards. Like, what are we going to promise with respect to AI models, not just to the market externally, but also to ourselves, to our own employees? And I know there's a tremendous amount of interest in this idea of having a good housekeeping seal of approval on an AI model, right? The idea that you've got this sort of penultimate score, and if IEEE or Responsible AI or whatever that group, nonprofit trusted brand is, puts that brand on the AI model, that somehow it can be trusted. There is nuance here, right? There are some concerns that need to be considered when thinking about this idea of an Uber score, right? So for example, what makes up that Uber score? Like here, 78% aggregate score. Right here, you'll see 6 different sub-scores: fairness, explainability, robustness, accuracy, privacy, and then certainty, right? Which is, think of it as the flip of uncertainty. Now, mind you, different AI models should have different sub-scores. If I have an AI model that is making decisions about microchips and not about people, fairness may necessarily be weighted at 0, right? Or maybe not considered as a subscore for this kind of model. So when nonprofits or auditing groups are thinking about creating this good housekeeping seal of approval and this aggregate score, one needs to question how these things are weighted, right? To make sure it truly is transparent how they came up with that score. Again, there's a lot of nuance here that we're thinking about, that we're learning about. What we've done within IBM is we've taken all of this information that I'm describing to you about, like the AI life cycle, and what we're doing is creating milestones and detailed information, like a how-to best practice playbook on what different kinds of individuals on those teams need to be doing, both from an AI engineering point of view in practice, as well as design, as well as ethics. Additionally, when thinking about governance, it's really important for organizations to think about standing up an AI ethics board and detailing for that board, like, what's the rules of engagement, ensuring that there can be whistleblower protections, that people can anonymously submit concerns to that AI ethics board, that there's a rotating leadership model, no conflicts of interest, that ethics board truly is made up of a diverse and inclusive group of people. So again, all things we've been working with the World Economic Forum to create a toolkit for how to build an ethics board. With respect to tooling, we started working on this back in 2013. We've actually donated a number of tools that address things like fairness and explainability and robustness. We donated it to the open source community via the Linux Foundation. So anybody can freely have access to this. For example, if you're looking to mine for bias within a data set, you could use a tool like AI Fairness 360 in order to look at that data, and it will give you a flag as well as suggestions on how to mitigate for that bias. I know I'm short on time. I'm wrapping it up. I get asked this all the time. What can I do if I don't feel like I have power? Like, they'll say, I believe you, Fedra. Absolutely. You're spot on. But what do I do? I'm not a CEO. I'm not a CTO. What do I do? what you can do is pass on what you have just learned, like pass it on. I find it absolutely criminal that today, most of the people who learn about what I'm talking to you about today are lucky enough to be in a higher ed institution where they self-categorize as coders, as machine learning scientists, as data scientists, and not for everybody else. I mean, isn't that crazy? It's absolutely crazy. Like, why are we not teaching this in high school? Why are we not teaching this in middle school? Why are we teaching this to our next generation of legislators, to our medical school students? Because ultimately, no matter what you want to be when you grow up, AI is going to directly affect your industry. And as I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, it's already being used to make decisions that will directly affect lives. And I thought about, how do you introduce this kind of an idea or this kind of concept to even younger kids? And I did a project with a high school near where I live, where we co-designed, co-developed an AI-powered Harry Potter sorting hat. So just like the book, you put the hat on your head, it's got a microphone, a natural language processor, and you would say something unique about yourself, and it would put you into one of the Hogwarts houses, right? So the hat's lips would move and say, Ravenclaw, right? So I decided I was going to use this opportunity as a lesson to teach kids about AI bias and AI explainability and transparency. And so I rigged the hat such that if any of my kids were to put the hat on their head and they would say something that I would guess, they would say, which was unique to them, the hat would immediately put them into Slytherin, which I knew they would not like, right? Because Slytherin is the evil house, which I have been told and corrected that is absolutely not true. But anyway, put them into Slytherin. So they put the hat on their head. My 15-year-old daughter and I, we were up on stage. She puts the hat on her head and she says something unique about herself. And of course, the hat says Slytherin. And she turns to me and she crosses her arms and she says, "Mom, you rigged the hat." And I said, "Let this be a lesson to you. Never trust an AI that's not fully transparent and explainable. You should be able to ask the hat, what data did you use about me in order to make this decision? Let's see the data lineage and provenance." And it's amazing, using pop culture as a means to get some of these more complex ideas across is really, really important. Other things we're doing in education on the left side of the screen, and I promise this is like my last chart, left side of the screen, we've curated curriculum for K through 12 educators. It's freely available via this organization called MindSpark. And on the right side of the screen, what you're seeing is that we've made curated curriculum available to students as well. And this is typically for like high school, higher ed folks who are trying to retrain. They're a little bit further on in their skill sets. But we too are thinking, okay, we need to double down our investments in education. And that's absolutely clear, because if you think about it, AI is not going away. We actually desperately need artificial intelligence in order to do so many things. We have so many challenges we want to overcome, but maybe even more importantly, we can use artificial intelligence to be mirrors of ourselves so that we as humans can be better. We as humans can recognize our biases and be more fair, be more transparent, be more explainable. So we really do have an opportunity. I think the key, though, is to ensure that we're hosting a much smarter conversation than we have been about this space, about AI. Okay, that's it for my talk today. I hope this has been helpful to you.
Thank you so much, Petra. It was really a great opportunity that you have shared all these ideas with us. I have to say that I have a very difficult time acting as a as chairing the session in this hybrid conference, because at the same time I have to attend the YouTube channel to see if there are questions. We have to explore the virtual world with Jean-Francois to see if there are visitors in the conference center, and at the same time to have the participants here with physical presence. So maybe I need an artificial intelligent companion, you know, and maybe we can test this as an idea, you know, if the new concept of the conference is organization, to have such a facility in place. But we can discuss in another occasion. So I will now give the floor to the participants. Maybe there are some questions. Yes, there is one question. Just a moment.
Hello, thank you very much for your very interesting talk. The questions I would like to ask is, obviously, the IBM Academy, but how far companies and the big tech are willing to listen to what you have been talking? You know, we have the incident of Google and the head of the ethics.
I'm sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing you. Is it possible you could come closer to the mic?
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is this: I know you're in the IBM Academy, but how far do you think companies like the big tech are willing to listen to what you have just telling us about issues of bias in the algorithms? We've had the issue of, you know, the Google ethics lab, the lady, I don't remember her name right now, but I have
Timnit
yes,
Gebru.
Yeah, Gebru, exactly. She just she became from she was within one day turned from a researcher into a whistleblower, and then she was dismissed. The question is, you know, the companies, the big tech, these are the ones who have the keys. The governments and the organization can do as much as exploring in the way that you have done it. The question is how far the companies are willing to accept what you have been saying. Thank you.
It is such a good question. Thank you for your question. What I can tell you is that undoubtedly regulation is coming. I mean, obviously, we're seeing it within the European Union now with respect to artificial intelligence, and we know without a shadow of doubt it is coming to this side of the Atlantic as well. And I think that the more educated people are about this space, the more concerns they have with respect. Remember what I mentioned at the beginning, the 3 things that keep me up at night? That's why I have such a burning desire to educate as many people as I possibly can about this. Because in earnestness, like, these tech companies are made up of people, and they go and they sell to people. So the more people that really understand, again, that it's not a technological challenge that can be just solved with a tool that is thrown over the fence alone, that it must be addressed holistically.
We lost you there. I wonder whether, because I said something about Google, that YouTube's ceased to work.
Did I?
Hi, can you hear us? We lost you there for a minute. I thought it was because I mentioned Google that YouTube stopped working.
I forgot what I was saying. I think I was saying, like, about education. So regulation, education, I think these are the things that we must hang our hopes on, and the knowledge that the market, as the market gets more savvy about what to demand, you know, like for example, when I go to a bank, and if there's some kind of regulation that says, if you're using an AI model to determine the percentage interest rates that people get on their loans, you have to render it transparent. It must be transparent. It must be explainable. When that happens, I, as a consumer, if I'm educated and knowledgeable and just enough to know, here's what I should expect with respect to things like fairness scores, then I have more power to decide, should I go to this bank or should I go to another bank? I think that's what's going to be unfolding. That's why at the end of my talk, I mentioned the fact that it's criminal. We're only teaching this to a small subset of people, because that's crazy. We've got to get out of that. We've got to make sure we're really being much more holistic with respect to how we're teaching this and who we're teaching this to.
Thank you very much. I think the counter argument here is that technology is much smarter than regulation, and here is where people like Elizabeth Warren comes in and says we have to break these guys up. You know, there is no way to control them. They are much wiser than any regulation that you can put forward. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you. You just to before you leave, come back. So I want to just say, I love the idea of technologists being able to do civic tours of duty, like on a national level, on a regional level, on a state level, like just thinking about what happened with this pandemic and how at a local level, how desperate different government agencies were for having people who understood the technology. You know, being able to establish something like that across different regions of the world or across the different parts of the country, I think would be key. Anyway, thank you so much for your questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Pedro. Thank you very much.
Other questions? No. So I think that's all for the moment. Let me check. Okay, so Pedro, thank you so much for being with us this evening, and we are looking forward to explore how artificial intelligence can be introduced really to schools, to education, to improve learning outcomes and the overall school operation. Thank you.
Responsible AI.
Responsible AI. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. The next presentation is bringing us to the school reality, to the school practice, and the Institute of Educational Policy, the last 5 years at least, is implementing a series of initiatives related with open schooling, and is trying to see how can these innovative ideas and concepts could be harmonized with the educational policy and the design of the school of the future. So we have the pleasure and the honor to have with us Dr. Georgia Fermeli. She is the coordinator of major initiatives from the Institute of Educational Policy, focusing on the open schooling. And in her talk is going to present to us how the schools are reflecting to this change and to present us the lessons learned from the Greek schools.
Good evening. I would like to share with you some thoughts concerning the implementation of R4C project in the Greek schools. My presentation is divided in 4 parts. Key points, open and immature schools, implementation of R4C project in Greek schools, and results and conclusion. Let's start from some key points that research has shown worldwide. For example, students decrease their enthusiasm for school, and they don't put their best effort in school subjects because they didn't believe that school is an exciting place for learning. As well, we know that in many countries we have overloaded curricula, we teach a lot of content, and at the same time, we have low scores in science as well in reading and maths. Of course, we would like to change this situation and develop a modern school in which will be characterized by innovative curricula, quality textbooks, modern supervisory tools, utilization of new technologies. A modern school that invests in the human resources, teachers and heads, with emphasis on the training, the lifelong learning, and the use of technologies and internet. A school with modern buildings, designed with principles of bioclimatic architecture, made with ecological materials to save energy and use renewable energy sources. Such buildings facilitate the educational process and at the same time teach by developing environmental awareness in children. A school that supports human-centered education, which concerns the support and inclusion of people with disabilities and special educational needs, as well as people from socially vulnerable groups. A school that supports environmental education for sustainable development, a school that supports digital maturity, which concerns equality in access to and fight against digital illiteracy and the implementation of distance learning. A school that supports languages learning and linking education with sport and culture. That school can lead us to a sustainable future. A second point is, of course, the pandemic. We are going through the second year of the pandemic, and we know that the obligatory rush and suddenly transition from the traditional face-to-face education to the distance learning, synchronous and asynchronous, affected all educational systems and all levels of education from primary to tertiary. The implementation of R4C project took place during this period of the pandemic, in fact, in the core of the pandemic, and had to deal with all the problems that arose from the new way of teaching. At the same time, some common questions arose again, like the equity in education and the shortage of the devices in school population. In this framework, why a school which faces all these difficulties during the pandemic decided to implement a project like R4C, a project that add more work to the head of the school, teachers and students? We do not have a clear answer, although the Greek schools participated in R4C and succeeded to increase their openness and image while they were networking, sharing their expertise and reflecting on common challenges that they were facing. What we can do in order to transform our schools into open and immature schools? As teachers or students, first it is needed to want to change, and then we can start reflecting on it. We can't do it alone or in our school or participating in a group of schools, a network which offers the opportunity to use common tools, exchange ideas, and have support, like R4C. Every school is unique. So how we can move these schools from its current status, pedagogical, administrative, and human resources, to an open, modern, sustainable school? R4C offered the opportunity to the schools to do a step forward through a clear vision and strategy and tools, which supported an interdisciplinary environment of innovation and promote collaboration with non-formal and informal education, and succeeded finally to unfreeze the current situation at any school and support it to move on to transform to an open and immature school. In other words, to overcome the typical structural inertia. We followed an open and supportive process. First step, the announcement and the applications from the interest schools. We have done an open call to all schools in which we have done clear the objectives of the project. So all knew from the beginning that it was a quite demanding procedure. This helped them to not be disappointed during the implementation. The interest schools submitted their applications in which they were explaining why they would like to participate to the project. They also were describing their experience in school innovation. They proposed a school project mainly on STEM, which is a powerful multidisciplinary environment of education, and how they can use responsive research and innovation in this project in the framework of R4C. They organized their pedagogical team and appointed their coordinator. We have also asked their commitment to participate in the project at least for 2 years. This duration was necessary for the implementation of the proposed R4C procedure in order to be able to record change in the school openness and immature. The second step was an independent committee that selected the schools. Except the above mentioned criteria, the committee took also under consideration the geographical distribution of the schools. We have selected schools from all regions of Greece. The percentage of the selected schools depended also from the population of the region, the type of the region, urban, suburban, rural, mountainous, coastal, etc. And finally, the variety of schools. Kindergarten, primary schools, secondary schools, modern schools, music schools, school of arts, vocational schools, special needs schools, experimental schools, multicultural schools, and second chance schools. This selection gave us a representative school sample from all over Greece and all school types. The third step was the implementation of the project philosophy from school teachers, heads, and students by using project resources like Roadmap for Openness, SRTs, SDPs, Students' Motivation Interest Questionnaires on Science, accelerators, platforms for collaboration development, and distribution of schools' results. We gave a special emphasis on communication, especially this period in which we didn't have face-to-face communication. So we have established a frequent but not annoying communication with schools, both with headmasters and the coordinator of the pedagogical team of the school. Schools are receiving every day many administrative emails, and the dividing line between informative emails and non-necessary emails is very thin. Except the tools and general guidelines for the implementation of the project, teachers knew that R4C team was there at any time to support them and to solve their questions. By sending an email to the project team, specific person support schools for this, or to R4C help desk, and by participating to the optional online weekly meetings via MS Teams and other platforms. Meetings were optional, although more than 70% of the school participated every week. Parallel with have developed a Moodle platform, except the tools and platforms of the project, we used a Greek school, especially for the Greek schools, one more Moodle platform to support them. In this platform, we saved all supporting material that we used, guidelines, presentation of training seminars, facilities like teleconferences tools, BBB, MS Teams, etc., repositories for the dissemination of school projects and other activities, announcement for schools, and others. In Moodle platform, we have also established two communities aiming to increase the communication between schools on the subject of the communities. The Moodle platform acts as the memory of the Greek schools. Each school can go back at any time and find all national resources of the project. Each R4C Greek school discovered and established links of R4C project with other initiatives of the school, e.g. other European projects or national initiatives of the Ministry of Education, like the initiative Skills Laboratory for 21st Century, or optional school activities on environment, culture, and health, or simply in a daily school subject, natural sciences, ICTs, and others. R4C this way found a convenient time in the school timetable without further burdening the already overloaded school timetable. Results. What we have seen all these years, almost five, on openness and immature of schools through projects like R4C. Schools continue ongoing self-reflection, discussion, and learning setup. School projects are incorporated more and more ICTs. Schools became more active in dissemination of their activities and results. Teachers became more familiar with platforms and participate year by year more frequent in online training activities. Schools prepared and organized their own training activities for their teachers and the school community too. Students increased interest and motivation on science. Some examples from the Greek schools are the following. We can see here one school from Iraklion, Creta, which developed an application for weather forecast. A second example, is from a vocational school of Lesbos Island, which use drone technology for environmental awareness. Some more examples from Sambos Island. We have here a school which designed a 3D printer, and a school from Kalamaria, from the area of Thessaloniki, designed a digital model of a seismograph. One more school for Limnos Island. They have developed two activities. The first one is a smart vision device that recognizes products in the supermarket and transmits the name of the product via a voice message to the user. It's for the people who have problems with vision. And the second project, it was a hybrid system for the utilization of solar and wind energy for the supply of local information station in order to offer geographical and touristic information to interested people. And at the same time, people could charge electronic devices in these small stations. From the primary schools to exams, one from the region of Goni, they have in the school a school museum about the history of education, and through R4C took the opportunity to highlight their museum through internet and ITCs. A kindergarten, a small kindergarten from Klimatia in the region of Ioannina, they study space, and the teacher has developed very innovative educational activities for face-to-face and distance learning education. Especially in the period of pandemic, the fourth primary school of Thermi developed a different project under the name Art and Emotions in the Era of Pandemic. As we know, the condition to the COVID-19 pandemic brought new data to the lives of the students, and their psychological and emotional support was considered of highest importance. So this school developed this project on emotional skills for better coping with a stressful situation and the development of security in the time of the pandemic. And the main aim was to get students in touch with famous painters and their works, to get to know the art and to realize that paintings can be a source of inspiration, recognition, and expression of their feelings, even behind the masks. My last example is an example of a prison school. We have in the team a prison school, a second chance school. And in this school, the teacher has developed with their students a project on beekeeping program. It was very successful. The local community support this project. In other words, implementation of R4C tools in Greek school, like ongoing reflection tool, RSATs, discussion and learning setup, students' questionnaire regarding interest and motivation in science, show that the participating schools are increasing their openness through these activities. R4C supports sustainable development goals, and especially goal 4, that describe the inclusion and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The combination of project tools with national initiatives from the Greek Ministry of Education, like Skills Laboratory for 21st Century or optional school activities on environment, culture, and health, and other regional and local initiatives, lead the schools to increase further their openness and strengthen the concept of open school, and step by step to be transformed into sustainable schools. Finally, for us, it's clear, according to the data selected, the schools are changing, and they are changing because they want to change. We are convinced that schools have the competent staff to make a difference, although sometimes they need a spark from the system itself or from an external factor like R4C project to increase the temperature in order to start reflecting and finally change. Thank you.
waiting here for questions. Thank you so much. Are there questions for Dr. Fermeli? No, so we can move. Oh, sorry, Nikos.
You get the feeling that challenges that the teachers faced during this pandemic was something that added to the motivation to do things, or the corporate development of time.
This is the strange thing. I think it's something. Rico, would you like to repeat the question for the people which? Okay. So, as I told you before, I think that add to the schools, and it was something that they have done and they like to do it. And in the morning today, during our meeting, I received a message from my teacher, which participates in the Partnership project, and she was asking me if we can continue the project. And for me, this was very important because it is an evidence that schools like to participate in a project like Partnership.
So thank you very much for all this effort that has been done. I think it's very important for the Greek schools to participate in such projects and have, let's say, the opportunity to design such activities. The last talk for this evening is focusing on the process, on how the schools can develop their plans, how we can really support the schools to develop their plans towards openness and immaturity. And there are different steps in this process that are really can act as catalysts in the overall transformation procedure for schools. Nikos Zigouritsa is working in the field for more than 20 years. So I think he is the appropriate person to present his vision for setting up such a roadmap for schools. Nico, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I'm really honored to be part of this opening session today, not only in order to present what we have been doing in the past years in order to make a fruitful use of self-reflection use by the schools around Europe, but also, as Sophocles said, to present a common vision that we have, some pioneers who we are working with schools around hundreds and thousands of schools around Europe, in supporting them in order to become the best version that they want to be. So let's say that my presentation is about the next step of a self-reflection tool. The discussion about self-reflection processes and tools around Europe has been, let's say, a hot topic for the past 5-10 years. We have all seen the uptake of different tools from teachers in schools around Europe. But what we have been focusing in the Reflecting for Change project, which I have to note that this conference is the closing event of this very interesting project, is what's next. Okay, the school has filled in the proposed self-reflection tool, but just filling in the tool on its own has no actual value for the school and the parts of the school community. So what we have tried to do is to support the school community in order to process, understand their needs, make the necessary steps in order to become an open, immature school, or as we would like to call them, an innovative ecosystem in the end. So what we have been trying to do is bringing together at the forefront of digital innovation and openness, the process of self-reflection. This is a process that offers a highly realistic view of the actual needs of the school, and in a rather dialogical way offers constant reflection about crucial aspects of the school. A school as a learning environment, a school as center of innovation, and as hub of social engagement of responsibility. So our aim was to connect existing tools, the OSOS SRT tool that we have been testing in the Open Schools and Open for Open Societies innovative project with more than 1,200 schools around Europe, and also part of Selfie, which is an established tool for using technology in schools. It is a very focused tool. In this framework, we decided our vision was to fill in the self-reflection tool, and we are here to support you. How? By providing to the school a series of services, a profiling mechanism, a recommendation system. We propose a strategy towards openness and immaturity in order to improve and address the needs that the use of the self-reflection tool has diagnosed. So what we are aiming for, let's say, is innovation in openness and innovation in digital maturity. So we need to support a school that introduces innovation in the classroom by creating an attractive environment for all, for the students, for the teachers, for the whole school community, that facilitates inclusion, but most importantly, a school that understands that a school as an organization is not an island on its own. It is a part of a bigger community, a part that engages, a community that engages families, the local community, experts, the universities, research centers, museums that are part of the community of the school, and sees itself as an ecosystem of digital innovation. A school that builds synergies with other stakeholders, brings inside the school activities the families, by engaging parents actively in the school processes, that builds synergies with an emphasis on expertise, networking, research on responsibility on both local and global challenges. How we can address these issues? We need to support schools in order to have a clear vision and a development plan in order to describe their journey towards openness and digital innovation with all the necessary steps. I will come back to this because this is how we support schools to take the next step of the self-reflection tool. We need to support school in order to incorporate strategies that address and encourage problem solving, teamwork, active citizenship, critical thinking, and gender equity. and a school that understands the needs of each part of the school community. And one, if not the most important part, let's say, of this community is the teachers. It's the people that are active every day in the classroom, and we need to support them with continuous professional development and acquisition of new digital skills, and towards a shift in their mindset and a change in everyday school practices towards open schooling. Another very important part of this process is the engagement of the students. We need to bring students at the core of the school's activities, and we need students that understand and appreciate the role of the school as a center of innovation, as they become owners of the school projects, that the school projects address local societal challenges, and students cooperate with the local stakeholders like museums, science centers, or other stakeholders. We support schools that has a school that has teachers and students that participate together, they collaborate, they understand that they are in the same team, and they can build networks with common projects with other schools with an emphasis on societal challenges. And we have, I will present later an example where the school community, teachers and students become scientists and work with scientific data in order to create school projects and address societal issues. What are some more of the characteristics of an open and digital, mature, innovative school? It is a school that is in continuous dialogue with all its actors and stakeholders, and understands change through self-reflection. Dr. Fermeli earlier presented the use of self-reflection tools, but we need to keep in mind that it is an ongoing procedure, the use of the self-reflection tool. It is a dialogue of the organization, of the school organization with itself. It's not just a picture that we take once we have filled in the self-reflection tool. We need, it is self-explanatory, reflect on the needs of the school and keep working to address these needs. So this school, an open and innovative school, uses modern digital self-reflection tools to monitor and evaluate its practices, aiming at openness and a new organizational culture. We have been working in order to represent school innovation as a chain reaction that takes place in the school. I'm not a physicist, but I have been working with some brilliant physicists lately, and I think I start to understand what is a chain reaction, especially a chain reaction in schools, which is my interest, education. So we need to begin by increasing the mass, the needed mass. So we need to find teachers that are ready to take the first step and work in order to build a network of teachers that they can work together. So building on the teacher and the school leader capacity is a key point, vital for the successful transformation of the school. A successful change strategy requires professional development, as we already said, feedback and support for teachers, along with a well-researched monitoring and evaluation system. The next step is, okay, we have found these teachers, we are working them towards professional development. We need to create a shared vision of what we want to do, a shared vision for how education best can meet the needs of all the learners of all the parts of the school community. And we need to, once we have established this vision, to develop a plan that translates this vision to action. This vision and planning processes should be based on the holistic view of the current status of the school. So we do the self-reflection tool exercise in order to understand where we are, but we need really to take the next step and plan our work and understand and develop a plan of where we want to go. We have seen where we are with the self-reflection tool. We need to have a plan of what we want to become. Once we have increased the mass, we need to increase the density. How we can do that in the school? We can do it by building partnerships and capacity for change. We need to find external stakeholders that we will bring in to the everyday school practices. Partners such as science centers and museums that could have a catalytic effect in the transformation process of the school as an organization, an innovative organization, by bringing in inside the classrooms their open and creative culture. We can work together with research organizations that could offer unique insights on how scientists and science really works. We have the very good example here in Greece, but also in Italy, Turkey, Cyprus, and Bulgaria, with schools that have created a network of school seismographs. And they are, monitoring the field as active scientists. This has started with the collaboration of the National Observatory here in Athens, who are the responsible organization for monitoring earthquakes, and they have brought the scientific ethics and the scientific ways of doing things inside the classroom. The selection of the partners, we need to understand that has to be done according to a specific innovation action plan and the real needs of the school. We continue the transformative process of a development plan, of the school development plan. So we have increased the mass, we have increased the density. What we need to do is put the whole thing on fire, increase the temperature by bringing into the classroom a unique collection of innovative digital resources and tools that are based on real world problems. Give some motivation to the teachers and the students by providing good examples of projects around Europe. Giving students and teachers more opportunity to evaluate the quality of their own thinking and projects for art, feedback, reflection, and revision. We can also include increase the temperature by giving students and teachers the opportunity to interact with the scientific community and providing and receiving feedback from multiple sources. And last but not least, by building local and global communities where teachers, teacher trainers, educational policymakers, parents, students, other scientists, or other interested members of the society are included in order to expand the learning environment beyond the school walls. Going back to providing digital resources and tools based on real world problems, I have spoken about the network of more than 1,250 schools around Europe of open schools. We have seen common needs and common, let's say, worries about real world problems. And we have provided a platform in order for them to come together. The example that I'm going to present has struck me very much in the beginning, because we had schools from Portugal, Ireland, Greece, and Italy that they have not met before, designing projects about how bees and their extinction would affect the local environment of the school. So we have seen that they had common ideas, and we need to bring these people together, bring these schools together to build new common projects and provide them tools and examples to do the work better. And we are still, I have pushed the wrong button, sorry. We have increased the temperature. The fourth step is increase the reflectivity. So we need to have technology-enabled assessments and support mechanisms based on analytics, support learning and teaching by communicating evidence for learning process and providing methods in order to have a clear insight to the teachers, to the school leaders, to policymakers and parents, but most importantly, to the learners themselves. The learners themselves need to understand how they can assess what they are doing and why doing the innovative projects, but also understanding the assessments have a real effect on their own knowledge. So this is in graphic, the whole process that we are trying to do. So we start with the culture of change, find the changes that we want to work with, get together inspiring leaders, find people that they can collaborate with the schools. We are here in the increase the density of the mass that we can find, and then how we can increase the temperature by providing them with resources and tools that they can use and ways to plan their work better, and in the end, increase reflectivity by supporting them to become digital learning communities in order on the final path, which is not the end, but the beginning of a new journey for the school to become a sustainable innovation ecosystem. So this is the work that we are supporting the schools to do. Evaluation of their openness and innovation using self-reflection tools. The next step, what you have seen, what are the outputs of this self-reflection exercise? Understand your needs and build a school development plan that will address these needs. Next, based on this plan, build and empower a group of change inside the school. And the next step, work with student projects that address local and global challenges. But as you can see, the fourth step doesn't end. It is a circle. Once you have done the projects and you have seen how students work, do the self-reflection exercise again. Continue your work. Innovation is a process. It's not something that you achieve and then your life is full and you just stop acting. It is a process, a constant process inside the school. So what we have supporting schools to do is to design their own projects, bringing together the whole school community, but most importantly, putting the student on the driver's seat. The students feel much more motivated when they create the projects that are based on real needs, and we provide the platform of the 4 steps: feel, imagine, create, share. Students need to feel, understand what is the issue. They need to imagine solutions towards the solution of the issue. They need to create, to build things, to create the projects, to work together with other schools, with other stakeholders. And again, last but not least, share. However successful the project is for the school community, it is nothing if it is not shared with other schools, with the local community. We had, I will address later how schools have created videos, they have created events inside the school in order to share their work and find and build new partnerships. So we have 324 schools today, let's say, that they are working on innovative projects in order for them to become more open and more digital mature in Greece, in Italy, and in Portugal. I'm very honored and happy to work with these schools and with the national coordinators that support the schools. And I would like to share some first results. These are the first results of the two measurements. What we are doing, the schools that participate in our implementation activities, fill in the self-reflection one time. Uptake the process that we are proposing that I have just presented. And at the end of the school year, approximately, they take the second self-reflection tool, and we can see an increase between these two measurements. And this is not a self-satisfactory pat on our back that we are doing a good job. It is something that we are happy to support the school to continue to do. Each school has their own profile in our platform where we support them with strategies and digital resources. And I'm happy to share, let's say, some innovative projects. We have to understand that during these past 2 years, the projects addressed real needs that students and teachers and the whole world haven't been seen before. So we had an example in Italy where, while the schools were closed, they have come together virtually, understood what is the issue during this day. So they created not only a website, but a digital radio in order to exchange ideas, to exchange school projects. And this was all done by the students. It wasn't something that was purchased from the school, from outside the school. This was done by the students. Also, we have an example in Portugal where, let's say, the lockdown didn't prevent them from acting up against climate change, which is a real issue that affects the citizens of tomorrow, our students. Again, I think in Portugal, pollution and climate change was a very hot topic, and they used design thinking to create digital awareness for the local community. We have actively supported the schools through courses, and we are happy to continue supporting teachers and schools around Europe. And these are examples of the fourth step I presented, the SHARE. Students we have seen are not only don't only like to work with projects that they have designed, they are proud to share it. And sharing their projects adds to their knowledge. And we have a lot of examples of schools that created different events in order to share their work. Here is a picture of the school seismographs and the network of schools that are around Greece, and they exchange scientific data based on the measurements of the school seismograph. And also a very big topic during the last 2 years was, okay, I cannot go to the museum, I cannot go outside, can I visit with my classroom digital museums? Of course, this is a real need that you have seen that affects your everyday school life. How we can address it by providing solutions, digital solutions. This is an example of our conference room at Second Life. We had different schools joining us throughout the school year and creating posters virtually because we couldn't meet it face to face. And again, one other example is students going to their mayor to present their work and organizing the events in order not only to publish the results to other schools, but also motivating the whole society. I will be happy to receive your questions if there are any to my email, and I would like to thank you for listening to all the great things that we have been doing the last years in Reflective for Change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nikos. I would like to thank all the speakers. And I would like to say two things. Of course, this mainly, the first one refers only to the participants here. We will have now the opportunity to have dinner. We have prepared dinner for you. And also you have the opportunity to attend the observation night at the telescope. We are going to transmit this to another channel. So the virtual participants have to follow the program and join the second Zoom link in the program, and they will have the opportunity to experience the night sky of Attica. That luckily this evening is very, very clear, and we can have some nice images of Saturn, Jupiter, and a bit later of the almost full moon. So that's all for this evening. I would like to thank you all for your participation, and see you tomorrow for the next session of the conference. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.